Welcome everybody up to the Don't Pick the Scab podcast. Today we have Wesley Farnsworth, author of The Blueprint of Becoming. He joins us today to share his remarkable journey from hidden struggles to authentic transformation. Raised as a pastor's kid, Wesley outwardly embodied success, yet privately battled addiction, codependency, and a deep sense of inadequacy. When his marriage reached a breaking point, he was forced to confront his pain head-on, embarking on a courageous path of self-examination and healing. Through faith, counseling, and the support of a recovery community, Wesley discovered a renewed sense of purpose and freedom from shame. Inspired by his own journey, he wrote this book as a practical guide for men facing seasons of loss and transition. Wesley's story is a testament to resilience, the power of community, and the possibility of building a meaningful life after divorce. Today, he offers hope and actionable wisdom for successful men seeking to recover, rebuild, and thrive. Welcome to the show, Wesley. Tell us a little about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's good to be with you. Yeah, so you pretty much hit the nail on the head there. I grew up as a pastor's kid, and during that, I saw God provide in my life in many different ways, and I talk about some of those in my book. But one of the things that growing up as a pastor's kid, I had some self-imposed pressures on my life that I put there. I had to ask a certain way, say certain things, do certain things in order to make sure that I was reflecting well, positively on my parents, the church, God, all those types of things. I want to make sure I fit the mold, if you will, of what a pastor's kid should look like. And unfortunately, that led to me losing myself because I became more concerned with what other people thought of me and what they thought of what I was doing or saying versus what I thought I should do or what I thought I should say or what I thought I should think. So I really started losing myself. And that is what, in recovery, that is what we are known as codependence. Codependency is caring more about what other people think about you than what you think about yourself and what God thinks about you. And so that led me to a case of codependency, which I didn't know about at that time, but that's what started to form. In my teen years, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
That ended up leading to an addiction because I was out with friends one day and the friends said a term and they started laughing and joking around about it. And I had no idea what that term meant, and that bugged me. And so I went home that night and I looked up this term. And that night, the addiction, or I should say curiosity at least, was born for pornography. And obviously the curiosity became a little bit more than a curiosity after a while, and then a full-blown addiction, because I was not going to be left out. If those terms like that came up again, I wanted to be able to be knowledgeable and participate in this conversation so that I would be accepted, so that I would be looked at in a positive light. And so that's how my addiction was born. And I tried to shake it many times over the years. And sometimes I would have some success, but it would only be short-lived. And for one reason or another, the addiction would come back. And it lasted well into my adulthood. It lasted 20 years. And I was finally able to shake it after realizing that I couldn't do it alone. And after admitting that I needed help to defeat this thing because it was beyond my power to do. And the church that I was attending at the time announced that they were starting this ministry called Celebrate Recovery. And I remember sitting in the audience and saying, man, that sounds like a pretty cool ministry. I should check it out. But for one reason or another, I didn't right away. And after a little while, I was like, okay, I really need to go. This sounds like it's for me. And so I'm driving down the road and I pull into the parking lot and I was like, man, I don't want to go in here. I just was feeling really heavy. I'm going to this church. I'm an active member. I'm running one of the ministries and all these different things. What are people going to say when they see me walk through the door? What are they going to think? What are they going to do? All that fun stuff. The enemy was just really working me over, trying to keep me from going in. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to just sit in the back row and I'll go tonight. And then I can say that I tried it and it's not for me.
Okay.
But that night I went in and for whatever reason, I was the only new person there. And after I was done, I went to this newcomers class where they tell you more about the ministry. And the host looked at me and he said, what brings you in tonight? And I said, codependency, which at that time I had never heard of until that night. Somebody had announced or was talking about it from the stage, and I was like, whoa, he's talking about me. So I said codependency, and he said, okay. And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, is there anything else? And it was in that moment that I started blurting out this secret, this addiction that I'd been dealing with for 20 years that I'd kept hidden. I kept it in the shadows. And I just started bawling. And I found out that all the lies the enemy had been telling me that I was unique, that nobody would understand, that I would be shamed, that I would be asked to leave, that all these things that he was telling me were not true at all. Because instead of all that happening, I just got you're a brave man. Thank you for sharing that. And I found, instead of rejection, I found acceptance. And I found love. And I found encouragement. And that night, my addiction was broken. And I'm now going 6 years strong. And it was in that moment that I've found that the Bible says that when you have something that you're struggling with, you need to confess it to another human being and God. But another human being is a big part of that too, because it's better to do things when you're connected and when you're in a community. When you can break that cycle of secrecy and confess it to somebody else, then it begins to lose power over you. And so that's what brought me how I got to where I am now with my addiction. But in 2019, while I was attending one of the meetings, somebody said something during a testimony that kind of set off this chain reaction in my brain. And it started with just this idea of the Knight's Tale movie. If you've ever seen that movie, it's got Owen Wilson in it. And this knight, is parading down the road, and he's in all of his armor, and this little boy is in the crowd, and he looks at his dad and he says, Dad, I want to be him when I grow up. And the dad, of course, is encouragement, saying, yes, son, you can do anything you want to be. You can be anything you want to be. And of course, in the crowd is a person that just has to give their unwanted input. And he says, no, you can't do that. You can't change your stars. You're just a peasant boy. You can never become a knight. You can never become part of the royalty, if you will. And that just really sat on my heart. And the more I meditated on it, God brought to mind the message that, when you are battling something in your life or you're unsaved, when you let go of that thing and you let him have it and you become saved, you are no longer that peasant boy. You are now transformed and you become a part of his royal family. You become a part of the kingdom of God. And so that story really started just stirring in my heart.
Okay.
And that's what led me to my book, The Blueprint of Becoming. It's because in it, I not only share my testimony, but then we look at people that were one way that the world says you can't ever be used by God, basically because of what you've done. And God says, no, I'm going to use you. And he does in very big ways. And so we focus all that around the constellation of stars. Everything we do in our life, everything that happens to us, our jobs, our relationships, our kids, our decisions, everything is a star in our constellation, our life. But what's important is what our North Star is in our life. And so we talk about how the North Star needs to be God, how it needs to be the brightest star and guide you in your path. And so that's where the book came from. And I just, it's become a passion now for me to come out and just help people realize that, yeah, things have happened to you. Divorce has happened to you. You've lost this job. You've had this addiction, whatever it is that's happened. Something has happened to you, but you're not defined by it. It's just a part of your story.
Correct. Yeah. So what I heard you say is interesting. I was listening. And so your curiosity got you into the addiction and your curiosity got you out of it.
Yeah.
Your curiosity at the church. That was that's interesting how that came around and went up and then back the other way. Yeah. So how did you manage the initial emotional turmoil with divorce and divorce recovery? Because that's a big thing for men.
You froze there for a second. I didn't catch all your question.
How did you manage the initial emotional turmoil, and what practical steps helped you rebuild resilience in your divorce recovery? Because that's really big for men.
Yeah, the big thing for me was just surrounding myself with community. I found a lot of comfort in community, and I really I went balls to the wall, if you will, in my recovery, and just really became even more involved in the church, more involved in the Celebrate Recovery ministry that I'm a part of, and just surrounded myself with people that could love on me, that would speak life into me, would encourage me. And I took my faith to another level in many ways. And if it was not for my faith and it was not for community, I don't think I would be where I am today. But I've seen people that, when something happens to them, especially something as painful as divorce, when something like that happens to them, they curl up and go into a ball. They become hobbits and they don't ever come out. They fully withdraw from society, except for maybe to go to work. That's not healthy. You need to be out. You need to continue life. You need to talk to people. And so I've made a very conscious effort of doing that. And then just continuing counseling too. A lot of people used to be counseling got a bad rap.
Yes.
And I think that stigma is slowly starting to go away, which is a good thing, because I'm like any other guy. When counseling was first introduced to me, I fought it tooth and nail. I don't need that. I'm perfectly fine. I can do this on my own.
Yeah.
And I would go to check a box, but I wouldn't really give it my all. But over time, I began to realize, okay, there's something to this. And I just kept it up. I still go almost every week, or if not every week. Sometimes it's just a maintenance, just to talk about whatever's going on that week, just to get it out in a healthy way. But at other times it's, hey, this is something big that's going on, or decision that I need to make. And it just gives me another avenue of somebody that I can talk to in confidentiality and be able to work through that thing, process it, and make a informed decision based on what I know, to the best of my ability, at least.
How did you overcome feelings of inadequacy and shame? And what advice would you give to men facing similar emotions?
I think those are natural feelings. There's something wrong with me. This happened to me. Now I need to feel shamed. And I felt those feelings too for a while. But what's happened has happened. You can't change what's happened. And I think the important part with all of that is, I mentioned it earlier, this has happened to you, yes, but it doesn't define who you are. For a while, I was thinking, this has happened to me. Now I'm never going to be able to do this or that or whatever. And I really God just was like, this is just a part of your story, and I'm going to use it if you'll let me. And so you just need to be able to, number one, first and foremost, feel those feelings. They're natural. But then you need to say, okay, I can't change what has happened. And now I just need to figure out what's next for me, and figure out how you move forward, and how you let this, instead of define you, how you let it become a part of your story, so that you're able to use it to come alongside other men that are now going through the same thing, or potentially could go down the same road, so that you can speak into their life and try and help them ease that transition, if you will.
In your book, you talk about extending forgiveness to yourself and your ex-spouse is transformative. Forgiveness part was the hardest part for me. And I think it's the hardest part for a lot of men. Why is that so important?
It's natural for us to want to number one, first of all, I don't talk about that specifically in my book, but to answer the question, it is important to forgive. If you don't forgive, then it's just going to eat at you and eat at you and eat at you, and it's just going to ruin you. It'll slowly eat away at you from the inside out. And it goes back to what I said earlier. What's happened has happened. You can't change what's happened, but you can choose what life looks like moving forward. And so for me, that meant forgiving. For me, that meant just realizing that you have to just figure out what you can do to make your life as best as it can moving forward now that you're in this newfound situation or this new phase of life. It's just another chapter in your story, in your book. It's another star in your constellation, to use a metaphor from the book. And that's where you have to just leave it, and just you have to choose to forgive. It doesn't mean you have to forget, but because it's always going to be in your back of your head. And I think that's something people often struggle with too, is I can't forget, so how can I forgive? Those are two different things. They're not mutually exclusive. You can choose to forgive and walk in that forgiveness and base your decisions around that forgiveness, but that doesn't mean you have to forget.
So how can you change your stars to shape your future?
Yeah, that is something that even I struggle with today, and I wrote a book on it, because it's not an easy thing, but a lot of it comes back to it's all about mindset. You have to make the decision to do this. I use the analogy a lot on these podcasts that I do when you think about going to the gym. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we're coming, man, I can't believe it's that close already. A month and a half or so on the new year. And people are always like, I'm going to lose all of this weight, so I'm going to join the gym. And they start doing it, and they go really strong for maybe a month and a half, 2 months, but not too long after that, at the most. For whatever reason, they don't go to the gym one day, and then that one day turns into 2 days, and then 3 days, and before you know it, they're not going anymore.
Yep.
And they have a subscription that they're still paying for. The gyms are going, yes!
We're making money. Oh, yeah.
But the reason that they didn't find success is they tried to do it themselves. And if you flip the script on that and you say, okay, I know that I can't do this by myself, I'm going to fail. And now you invite somebody else into the equation and you say, hey, friend Bob, like you and I, we're going to meet at the gym every day, or 2 days a week or 3 days a week, or whatever it is that you guys agree on. And we're going to work out. And now you are in a situation where you have accountability. You're going to meet them. They're going to meet you. Neither one of you want to let the other person down or be that person that causes it to fail. So now you have this encouragement, this accountability. The chances of you succeeding are a lot stronger. And so that's how I approach things now, is if there's a change that I want to make in my life, if there is a star that maybe has burned out and it needs to be removed from my constellation, if you will, then I need to figure out how to do that. And I need to have somebody in my life that will keep me accountable to make sure that happens. And so if it comes to something like an addiction, or it comes to just a bad habit, maybe it's picking your nose or whatever it is, then you need to have that person in your life that you can be real and honest with and be like, hey, this is an area of my life that I know needs to change. Mm-hmm. Will you keep me accountable in it? Will you call me 3 times a week or send me a text or something asking me how it's going and just keeping me accountable? And if you do that and you have that, you're going to be more likely to succeed, because you don't want to let this person down that has now agreed to invest in you and invest time into you to help you make this change. And when it comes to relationships, I had this question: how do I remove somebody from my life if they're not the brightest star in my constellation? That one's a little bit more difficult. Sometimes if they're not the brightest, it doesn't necessarily mean they need to be removed, but their influence on your constellation maybe needs to change. And in this case, I was talking to somebody that said, I forget what they said, so I'm going to use swearing as an example. I want to stop swearing. but my friend and their mom or whatever, they're really good to me. They give me a lot of good advice, all of this, but they won't stop swearing around me. And I want to change it. And I've told them and all that. I said, then maybe they don't need to be removed, but maybe their level of influence on your life needs to change. And maybe that means like you having the conversation with them and saying, hey, here's what I've decided I need to change in my life. And I need you to respect that. Or I may not be around quite as much. I'm not going to remove you guys from my life completely because I love you, but I'm not going to be around quite as much. Or maybe it's your mom and maybe it's your mom or maybe your best friend that gives you a lot of good advice and you're trying to change something. And the advice that they give you is not matching up any longer with the direction that you want to take your life. Then especially if it's family, you don't want to cut them out of your life because they're your family.
That's the toughest. Yeah.
But you don't need to let them influence you. You know, if you know that, hey, this is the direction of my life I want to take my life, and the advice that they're giving you doesn't match that direction, then you can do one of two things. You can still be around them and just say, you know what, I appreciate your advice, but I'm not looking for any right now. Or you can just let them say their piece and just let it go in one ear and out the other and just choose not to take it to heart. Whereas opposed, you would let it influence you.
And so like instead of, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so those are the two things that I would say when it comes to removing something from your constellation or your star from your life.
I really don't have stars. I have circles. So my circles, my closest circles are closer to me, and I'm in that circle. And then it's like stars. And then the further circles are further away where they have less influence. So it's the same thing going on.
Yeah, it's the same concept. I use stars in the book, and so that's why I was talking about that. But I've seen it very often referred to as circles of influence or circles of or whatever. Your inner circle are the people that you trust the most. They're the people that you share everything with, and they have the most influence over you and your decisions. And then the less you know them, so to speak, the further they move out in the circles. And then so you may have 7 layers of circles where they may be friends or acquaintances on that outside layer, but they don't have any influence over your life. So it's the same concept.
What about the guys out there practicing isolation? Why can that be not a good thing?
Man, if you're practicing isolation, please stop. I don't care what you have to do. Get out of there. Get out, force yourself out of isolation and force yourself into community. Once you get into community and you find a group of people that you can do life with, you're going to find yourself so much happier. When you're in isolation, it's really easy to become depressed. It's really easy for the enemy to get a hold of you and work in your life because you just have no other influences. And so if that's you and you're listening to my words and you're in isolation right now, and you're like, I don't want to do anything, force yourself out. Get out of the house, go for a walk, call up a buddy that you haven't seen in 6 weeks and say, hey, you want to go grab coffee? Or you want to go grab dinner? I'm a foodie. I love going out to eat with friends. That's just my thing. And so at least once a week, I go out with a friend and say, let's just go grab dinner, or let's meet for lunch, or let's grab breakfast or something, and just do life with them and just talk about what's going on and just hang out and build that community because your life is going to be better for it.
Wow. Why is setting goals so important to you? That's like crucial for rebuilding confidence and direction sometimes with goals. Why are those so important?
Yeah, goals are what drive you. If you don't have a goal of where you want to go, then you might as well just not go anywhere. It's like driving down the road on a trip, right?
Where we go.
Every now and then somebody will get in the car and just drive and just take random turns with no goal in mind. Every now and then. But nowadays with the cost of gas, ain't nobody going to do that unless you've got money to burn because that's what you're doing every time you get in that car. So when you get in the car, you have purpose, right? You have a destination in mind, and you have to treat life the same way. I have a destination. I know where I want to go. And now everything that you do is based on that goal. It's based on that destination. You've plugged it into your GPS, and now you're making decisions that get you to that final destination.
Yeah. All right, Wesley, my guys have about a half-hour attention span, and so do I. But we appreciate you. Man, that was fun. That was very interesting. The stars and the circles, that should help somebody out there, give them some advice and get them on the right path.
Yeah. And if I could, real quick, I want to do a quick plug. My book, I mentioned, we've talked here about the importance of community. And my book, The Blueprint of Becoming, Practical Guide to Faith, Failure, Finding Your Way Forward, is a great book to do on your own. Don't get me wrong. But it's also really good to do in community because, again, having a community to keep you accountable and help you is going to help you find more success. And so if you go out to the website, wesleyfarnsworth.com/start, you can find a free guide that I've put together, that will enable you to take my book and turn it into a discussion book, a 10-week discussion book that you can do with your best friend or a group of friends. There's a guide for the leader, whoever gets voted on to be the leader, and then a guide for the participants. But it gives you some additional questions that I don't ask in the book. It gives you just some additional things that you can do, and it gives you the ability to take that and turn it into a discussion. So now you have that built-in accountability team there, that as you work through the book and you begin to identify things in your constellation that need to change, you can have those discussions with that group, with that accountability team, and they can be there and you can be there for them in turn to begin to make those changes in a healthy way. So wesleyfarnsworth.com/start to get that free guide and more.
And we will have that at the bottom of the show notes. Let the people know what you might be having coming out. You're going to roll it out soon, podcasts and things like that. Speak on that.
Yeah. So I'm in the process of launching my own podcast. It's called Unmasked with Wesley Farnsworth. And in it, I'm going to have stories from other people that have had different struggles in life, whether it be addiction or just struggles with life in general. And then we'll have real life advice from people that have gone through things and how they got through it, advice on how to make your own faith stronger, and just, it's all about doing life, taking off the mask and just being real with each other. Because when you're able to do that, then you're able to help somebody. So yeah, Unmasked with Wesley Farnsworth. I'm going to start recording here soon, so that'll be available on all the players.
All right, Wesley, we appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us this morning, and thank you very much for your words of wisdom. Definitely words of wisdom.